Welcome to episode 144 of the Forward from 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 who are pursuing new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories, their way, and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward from 50 and your host for today's show. Today I get to speak with Elizabeth Parsons, who is a retirement transition expert, author, and coach. She helps high achievers navigate the confusing and often disorienting period that follows leaving a long, successful career. A former Wall Street attorney, Elizabeth learned firsthand how challenging it can be to move from a demanding professional life into an open and unstructured chapter. That experience inspired her to guide others through what she calls the graduation into more, or the encore stage of life after retirement. In our conversation, Elizabeth shares insights from her work with hundreds of clients, as well as lessons from her book, Encore, A High Achiever's Guide to Thriving in Retirement. She explains why retirement is not an ending, but a transition, and how people can design their next chapter with greater joy, purpose, and confidence. Here are some key takeaways from our conversation. First, retirement can feel disorienting for high achievers. People accustomed to validation through work often struggle when external rewards and structure disappear. Second, identity bridging is essential. Before retirement, individuals should reflect on who they are apart from their job titles and achievements. Third, life restructuring provides stability. Without work as the scaffolding of daily life, retirees must intentionally design new routines and goals that create fulfillment. Fourth, preparation should begin early. Elizabeth recommends starting 12 to 18 months before retirement to plan for lifestyle changes and emotional readiness, not just financial security. Finally, communication is key. Couples need to discuss expectations, roles, and personal interests well before retirement to avoid friction and ensure both partners thrive in this new stage of life. To tell us how people can replace their quantitative measures of success, like promotions and paychecks, with qualitative fulfillment found in relationships, learning, and creative pursuits, please welcome Elizabeth Parsons to the show. Thanks for joining me, Elizabeth. I really appreciate the time. Why do you think retirement is so surprisingly challenged for high achievers than compared to the rest of the folks?
It's a great question, and I think I have to answer it in part through the lens of myself, because I use that high achiever phrase a little tongue-in-cheek in my book, because I think of that type of person as somebody who feels rewarded when they have challenges that they can constantly pursue, and there is third-party validation of the worthiness of those pursuits. And so I certainly related to that for most of my life. And I think most of my clients would say they're very used to solving the problems of others or dealing with the agendas of others and then being rewarded in a third party way, whether it's with money or awards or praise or whatever it is. And when those things go away, and that's been your playbook for, am I doing this right? I think it can be very disorienting to figure out how you reimagine a measuring stick for life and how you decide that you actually are going to be the person every day who decides whether you like the way Monday went. So I just think in some ways it's both the habit and the personality style of people who've been in those environments for decades or more to look to other people to validate the effort, usually very hard effort they're putting in.
Those of us who are guys typically get our validation and our rewards, etc., from work. We identify with our title. When two of us meet on the street, it's always, "What do you do?" And they mean, "What do you do for a living?" kind of thing. So I don't know if it's only to high achievers or to everybody, but people who seem to retire and they lose that kind of environment where they get those rewards and they have those challenges, it can become very depressing for them, and they wind up getting caught in a rut if they don't do something to alter the trajectory of their life at that point.
100% agree. I am so very aware, but when this transition that I embraced much earlier in my life led me to that kind of place for a while before I figured it out, But I see that very real concern in all of my client stories that I am a person who needs to be contributing. I need to be engaged. I need to be on purpose. And while I'm excited that mission accomplished, I'm ready to retire, this is not for me the end. And I cannot suggest to anybody that like a life of leisure is all that will fulfill me now. So I think that's the other achievement mindset. It's that there's always more out there to learn or grow into. And I think the unfortunate thing about the idea of retiring, the way we think about it now, is that it's a retreat as opposed to a graduation into more. And so my entire perspective is you're just graduating again. This ought to be the chapter of more.
I agree. I live up here in Sun City, Arizona, which is America's first retirement community. It's a community of about 50 to 60,000 people, and there are 8 golf courses and 8 recreation centers. People flock here under the mistaken impression that they're going to retire and recreate and just enjoy life. And after 6 months of this, they're typically bored out of their minds if they don't have something to look forward to, something that is really challenging them to use their natural talents, learn skills, and life experiences to help other people.
Absolutely. I could not agree more.
Super. You define yourself as a retirement transition expert. What does a retirement transition expert do?
I always caution people, first of all, I'm not your money advisor. We all have many resources for that. And in fact, one of the realities that I have to deal with in the work I do is that we've all been told to prepare for nothing but our money.
Absolutely.
And so, right. Since the minute you get your first job, are you putting money in your 401k? All of which is good. I'm not beating up that idea at all. However, it's a very incomplete way to prepare. So my job is to help people recognize this moment in time as nothing more than a transition. It's not a location you go to or a new identity. It's just, you're just moving through a change in your life. And I am very attuned after doing the work I've done for 15 years and actually muddling through that myself, to the blind spots that people might have, particularly people who've been achievement oriented and intensely devoted to their careers as they approach this, and the pitfalls that can ensue if those blind spots aren't both surfaced and then there's not a strategy to deal with them. I think everybody can turn this inflection point into a moment of enormous opportunity, but like everything, it takes work. It takes awareness. It takes attention. So as an expert, what I mean to say is I now know with a great deal of confidence what most people are anxious about, what they haven't thought of, how they can get out ahead of this change in a powerful, confident way so that they have the best shot of making this next chapter the best they've ever lived. And why not?
I agree. So much of retirement planning is centered around money and
Exactly.
what to do, and very little about what are you going to do that gives your life meaning and purpose.
Exactly.
So what do you do to clients? How do you encourage them that they first need it and how to go about getting it?
Sure. I do a lot of speaking and writing, and the whole reason the book came to be was because I had so many people say to me when they heard the sort of work I did, oh my gosh, I have 10 people who need to talk to you. They're about to retire and they're terrified or they're miserable in it. It struck me that we have a near epidemic of this lack of preparedness and a lack of clarity about why this moment, which everyone's been looking forward to, right, since they were 20-something, suddenly is so like a jarring and unwanted almost. So when I speak about these things, the resonance is very strong. So funny enough, I have very little trouble with people saying, oh my gosh, yes, all of that, but no one's talking about it. But when we work with people specifically, we talk about 2 key processes that nearly everybody's got to grapple with as they think about what life's going to be like if it's enjoyable in this new chapter. One is identity bridging. You do have to recognize that if you've been working hard at something, you're almost certainly identified to a degree. And when it goes away, it can feel existentially threatening to who you are. And I lived that very thing. And so I am well aware about that's a project we have. And so we've got some very helpful ways to think about that. Secondly, there's the project of life restructuring. And anybody who's been devoted to work, and this is even true of motherhood, frankly, your life architecture is that work. And everything else lives around the edges. It's like the scaffolding that holds your life up. And so it makes sense when you say that, if you pull the scaffolding out with no game plan, it's like everything's in a jumbled mess for a while, right? Whereas if you redesign it, recognizing you're the one now who's going to be the architect of how you spend your days and weeks and years, you can get in the driver's seat of that. And while no one gets it exactly the way they want it right away, you feel that you're the one with intentionality behind it. So those are the two sort of big picture jobs that I think everyone's got. And then, of course, within those jobs, we've got lots of exercises, methods, and frameworks to give people meaningful approaches, which we can certainly talk about. I do believe when people get those two pieces in hand, they're on their way. And actually, it's quite fun. It's quite fun to design this new chapter.
I agree with that. What's the best time to plan for people? Is it within 3 months of retirement or a year from retirement or the day after retirement?
We try to work with people before. Our preference is really 18 months to 12 months before, because the changes you can make at that time are much more comfortable to make while you are still identified in your identity, in your life structure. You're beginning to lay pavement for the future from a place of strength and from a place of, I know who I am. I know how my days go. Nothing's disrupted yet. But while I'm in this place of strength and confidence, let me think, now dream a little bit about what the future could be like. And we also encourage people to, and it all depends on people's situations and careers, but don't keep this thing a secret, right? At some point, this is a group affair. Right? You've got family, you've got friends, you've got colleagues, you've got clients perhaps, and you need them to be in this journey with you if it's going to go smoothly. When you really realize that this act of wrapping up and leaving a career affects many people besides you, first of all, you don't feel so lonely. And second of all, you have helpers, you have collaborators, and you can start talking to the world about your future, which is the key many times to lighting up the pathways that are most daunting. There are many people we work with have those big dreams that they don't even want to say out loud because it's, oh gosh, I have no idea how to make that happen. And we say, look, every opportunity in the world is attached to a person. This is about getting with people and talking about what you would like to do. And you can't do that if you're holding this thing a secret. You can't talk about what's next if you're not admitting, I'm leaving in 6 months.
Not only is it an opportunity for those who you're working with to say goodbye and start wishing you well and preparing for that transition themselves, but the people around you on the other side of work have to prepare as well. There are so many stories I've heard, especially about retired men coming home and nothing to do and immediately starting to tell their spouse what to do and how to do it better. And it just creates a lot of needless friction.
Absolutely. You are exactly right. And when we work with people, there's certain of our programs include spouses for that reason, because it's changing their lives dramatically too. And in many cases, there's lots of excitement about what could be. But if everybody just defaults into the old habits of what life has been, that doesn't line up so well, because exactly to your point, one spouse is used to being in charge at work, so now they try to be in charge at home, and the other one's saying, wow, I've had a life, listen. And so it's really useful to have a place and a framework in which to say, what do we want? How do the Venn diagrams overlap? What's still you? What's still me? What's now us? It's just all these things can be renegotiated. And more than once, clients have chuckled and said, boy, you guys are marriage counselors. And we're not really, but to facilitate that conversation is very helpful, because I don't think most people even know how to broach it. what to say and how to cover the issue.
I agree with that. Do you think the issue with retirement, not knowing what to do in retirement, is that more common to men or women or both?
I would say, as I look across the last 15 years, I would say increasingly I'm working now with people who are retiring on the younger side. And so some patterns are shifting. But yes, I think in general, and this is why I would say many of the men we have worked with have struggled to see themselves as anything but what they've always been, because they're most, aside from spouse and father, their most solid identity is what they've done for a living in their career and that group they belong to. And they haven't had as much variety in the roles, the major roles in their lives. Whereas what I would say in general with women and even professional ones, because they have had to often hold motherhood, which is just almost so important that you can't set it like down next to a career. You have these multiple aspects of personality and identity, I think, that are stronger in women, even those who've been career focused. So perhaps it is easier for them to feel more nimble and trying things out. They also tend to be, and this is a generalization, but they tend to be better nurturers of their relationships. And so they've got a stronger world of friendships, a stronger set of hobbies, things like that. And anybody who's kept those things energized while they've been focused at work is just, frankly, their portfolio is a little stronger. If we get away from money, they're just standing in a stronger spot. Everybody can get there, but those are the patterns I would say I do see.
Something you just said made me think of the empty nest, because I've talked to a lot of people who said they were unprepared for the empty nest. And when I look at it, it's almost like a dress rehearsal for an actual retirement, because there are so many changes coming for the family, for the marriage, etc. When the nest is emptied, that
Yes.
how they handle that often determines what comes next in their life and whether they go in a different
Exactly.
direction, the marriage ends, etc. So,
I literally have a chapter in my book about that
really,
because I spoke to so many women in the research and writing phase of the book who said to me, my husband is like retiring from a job, but I just retired from full-time motherhood. And I heard that over and over
mhm,
again. And I said, yeah, that's real. Your energy, your structure, your identity has been mom,
the schedule.
schedule, right? So you're really navigating very similar issues. Just because you're not leaving an organization doesn't mean that you aren't grappling with all the same things. And yes, to the point of the family dynamic broadly and the relationship of the couple, you've had a common purpose it's a really interesting moment because it is a mission accomplished moment, but it's also a now what moment.
I tell people who are going through the empty nest that a year or two before the last child moves out is when the couple really needs to start focusing on themselves. I can imagine that's the exact same thing in retirement, when both
Yes,
of them will go during the day, they're off doing their own things, but now they're going to be together full time. It's got
that's
to be
exactly it.
right.
Yeah, you got to get on the same page about what that means. And I think many couples feel that after decades together, their relationship works because they've got some independence. And that doesn't mean to say they don't enjoy each other. It's not suddenly going to make sense that we're glued at the hips. That isn't it's
Right.
been forever. Yeah. So I think of it as wrapping up middle adulthood in a lot of ways. You're reaching the culmination of many important purpose-driven projects like creating financial security and building your family and getting your kids launched. And it's almost like you summit the peak. And it's so wonderful, but it's also scary because where are we going to go with our lives now? And there's always a great answer to that, but it's not obvious. I think it's also a moment that's so different for everybody, right? So it's not like a playbook. You're at this really interesting moment where your facts, your lives add up to something unique and interesting. And also that's daunting.
I think it comes down to expectations as well. We have to
Yeah.
set those up and at least talk about it, because
Yeah.
when everybody talks about retirement, we have different visions of what our retirement is going to look like. And if you're not on the same page, then you need to have that discussion. It's still possible to you have your own hobbies and your own friends, et cetera, and continue doing that. But the discussion has to take place as to whether we're going to be joined at the hip or whether we're going to continue our own thing.
Absolutely. And I think what I typically see is it's a relief to finally talk about it because there's way more alignment than I think most of the time either person's thinking. They're worried that there's a huge misalignment, but actually once there's a conversation, it's, oh, okay, I think we see this. Yeah, those are all very valuable things to grapple with and not just ignore and hope they work out.
You've mentioned your own transition a couple of times. What was it that was so eye-opening for you that made you realize that you needed to make a change?
My situation was driven by the collision of my legal career at a Wall Street law firm and motherhood. So I was 10 years in, 80 hours a week, and I'd worked so hard to get there. And I was very proud of what I'd accomplished. But I had a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old, and I was very aware that I was missing out on a lot. And I didn't feel like that was an honest expression of how I wanted to be a mother. I just reached the conclusion one of these things had to go, and it was certainly not going to be my kids. So I decided at the time to leave Washington, D.C., move to Tucson, where I felt that I had way more options. And I told everybody I was front-ending my retirement. That's the way I explained it. I said, you know what I'm doing? I'm just borrowing some time from the future because I need it now. I can make the money later. So it was, to me, again, it was all focused on time and money. And did I have enough money to buy myself that time and all that? So I sort of base jump out of this life I have into this life as a full-time mom in Tucson. And once the euphoria of that wore off, I found myself utterly lost. I did not know who I was. I didn't know how to be in a world where I had open time. I was used to time scarcity is my number one issue. I was used to pressure to motivate me. I was missing all my intellectual stimulation. I'd left my community. And part of it was because I'd always been a successful person and I could always brute force my way to the good conclusion. I just thoughtlessly did this. I did not plan. I did not think about my identity or how does Elizabeth's life work? How are you going to be in a world where your most pressing thing is to get the kid to preschool on time? Anyway, it was a really disorienting thing for me. And it took several years of reading and studying and thinking to recompose myself in a way that I made sense to me again. So anyway, I lived it. And now I am very aware that the moment of real retirement presents all the same issues.
You wrote a book about your experience called Encore, A High Achiever's Guide to Thriving in Retirement. I love that term encore because it is truly a second chance at a different life. So it is, you don't have to continue doing the same thing you were doing forever. You can start doing things that you really like, that you've dreamed about doing forever. So what prompted you to write your book?
First of all, I was so inspired myself as I was absorbing all kinds of theories and information about what happened to me. I was so inspired by writers who could put forward frameworks that would help you think intelligently about a human problem. I just thought that was tremendous. And so I was inspired to do that one day. But increasingly, as I would talk about what I did professionally, I really did have people constantly telling me, I know so many people who should talk to you. And of course, at some point you think to yourself, that's just not happening, right? I can't talk to all these people. But I can finally write that book that I keep thinking I want to write. And that's a daunting project. And it was very scary to start. But in the process of writing it was amazing how much more clarity I even got about why the way we works and what really is undergirding some of these challenges, how you can tactically deal with them. It's not just about, hey, there were issues you should know about. These are the ways you can solve for that. And I wanted to inspire people to think of this moment as a moment of change, not the beginning of the end. I wanted to inspire people to think of it as a graduation, as stepping into more, as the moment to say, exactly to your point, what have I always wished I could do that I could now try. And it's not irresponsible. I've got the financial security. My kids are raised. I can go try this and just enjoy trying it, and don't be so caught up in whether it succeeds. Are you being useful in the world? That's the question.
Thriving in retirement, many people think that's going to be all financial, but
Right.
you're addressing that from a different perspective. What can readers take away from your book?
I think they, in general, will say to me, you gave me a framework to think about what it means to be intentional about this next chapter of my life, both with myself, my identity, the way my life works. But I tell a lot of stories about real clients who came to me with a belief that their best years were behind them, or they didn't want that to be true, but they couldn't even fathom how to step into the future. No idea what that could mean. And those stories, I've had people tell me over and over, like that really made me believe I could go do the thing that I've always wanted to do that I never wanted to say out loud. I think I provide a lot of advice about how to get those ideas into action, how to stay in action, tactical things, how to use the people in your network to help you build the idea out, ways that have worked for real people. I've been doing this 15 years with hundreds and hundreds of people, and the lessons are strong and the patterns are consistent. So I'm really confident that the message of the book is what's helpful. It gives people a rope.
And not to hang themselves, but
Yeah, exactly.
that's a good point. You had talked about in your book rebuilding connections and purpose. How can people's connections that they have utilizing that network really help them in a purpose for their encore life?
Yes, it's such a powerful thing to connect with. To me, human relationships are the thing that give our life the most meaning. And let's talk about life, middle adulthood, before we get to this moment of retirement, we've got all of these natural ecosystems that we participate in. We have to, whether we want to or not. School, work, our kids' school, our neighborhoods, whatever. It's just everywhere. And you're around people. And one of the biggest fears people have is leaving all those contexts and saying, how am I going to meet people? How am I going to generate relationships? And so I always say to them, first of all, you've got dormant friendships that you can reactivate. And that's a huge opportunity. Second of all, the very things that you're most sheepish to talk about are the very avenues for meeting new people and exploring the people in your network who can give you advice. And this is one of the reasons to pick the phone up and call and say, hey, can we grab lunch? I know you have an interest in theater. I have an interest in theater that I've never had time to pursue. Can I get your advice? What a wonderful invitation to lunch that is. What a wonderful potential opportunity to build a whole new set of relationships connected to this person. And it's an avenue for relationship, for an interest, for new challenge. But what we tell people is everything you want to go do is attached to a person. Like opportunities aren't just floating in the sky. They're humans that can lead you to the thing or help you find your way. And I see the process of creating pathways as a process of reigniting or building relationships. And so those two things work with a beautiful synergy. And the people that really take that process seriously end up with rich communities, rich interests, and a whole palette of activities and ways to be in the world that they just never dreamed of.
Sounds like the ideal antidote to loneliness, which is a problem that's impacting so many seasoned citizens.
That's exactly it. And I think isolation is so easy to fall into. If you don't prepare for any of this, you suddenly lose your confidence. You've been pulled out of all your communities. You're a little embarrassed. You don't know what to say. Everyone wants to know what you're doing and you don't have an answer. And the next thing you know, you're isolated and depressed. It happens all the time.
All the time. Yep. So dormant friendships are great because everybody's in that process as well. Often if they're the same age,
That's
they're
right.
struggling with what they want to do, and just going out and having lunch not only gives you something to combat loneliness and isolation, but you can develop that synergy that may inspire both of you to do something great.
It happens all the time. I see that play out all the time. And the other interesting thing I mentioned in my book that I see play out all the time is that it's the second degree friends. So friends of friends, where often the most interesting things happen because you know your network and they know you, but it's that one person away that you meet.
That they'll know.
And whoa, I had no idea. And the next thing you know, it doors open. It's really interesting.
That's right. Somebody says, you need to talk to my friend over here. And you do that, and it's just amazing things can happen. That's what's the power of networking. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You talk about replacing quantitative success with qualitative fulfillment. What does that mean?
Yes. So I think any of us who have been in a scenario where we, quote, earned our living, we're very used to the measurable indicia of success. Did I get a bonus? Did I get a raise? Did somebody give me an award? And that's all good. We are motivated for those things in life. But when that is what you're used to getting, I think when it goes away, as it typically does when you retire, it's odd. It's like you lose all your positive feedback loops. And my question to people is, when you think about this next decade, you've got to think about what really is going to matter to you. And we have some ways of getting underneath that question. But I try to help people formulate ways to check in with themselves that really are looking at, am I prioritizing those things? And they're typically the things you would think, right? Like relationships. Am I making time for my family? Am I spending meaningful time with friends? Am I learning new things? Am I challenged by one project a year that I think is slightly daunting? Am I making a contribution somewhere? Whatever the things are. But I think everyone needs new yardsticks for success, and they always are qualitative. They're not things that you can nail down. They're more questions that you notice, am I living in that direction or not?
That's an excellent point. I know that learning new things is very important, and meeting new people, because society as a general today seems to be in the business of isolating us and putting us into silos and keeping us surrounded by an echo chamber of people who just support our current thinking, etc. And
it's a world where separation seems to be the playbook.
Right.
Yes.
And so this is an opportunity for you to change all of that, or for anybody to change that. Yeah. How can people go about learning new things? Do they have to go back to school? Or is it more reading, podcasts, etc.? What do you think?
All of that. I cannot tell you how often we talk about these avenues for learning, and there's so many out there. There's the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, which is an attachment to just about every major university in the U.S. It's only for people 50 and older, and it's a fabulous way to go and take classes with people in your general peer group. You can teach and you can go as a student. People love those programs. There are, as you say, there are podcasts, there are reading groups, there are lecture groups. The world is so full of interesting channels for content. And I think, if anything, it's the question of putting your attention in places that are truly rewarding and about learning, because I think there's a lot out there these days that can drag your attention straight into just nothing but a bad mood. But we are constantly gathering resources around continued learning, because I would say that's on almost everybody's list.
And conversations is something that our generation is used to doing, unlike the newer, younger generations whose conversations take place via text messages sitting in a group. We actually talk to people face to face and use our real voices most of the time.
It's true. And the nice thing is, if you are willing to be the instigator of some of these ideas in your own circle, people will follow. They will jump in with you, because that's what's in the way for most people. It's I just don't want to go first.
Exactly. Yep. So if you take that, break that ice and invite a couple of people out to have a fun time. We had said that a long time ago. I had interviewed somebody many years ago who said that she loved to cook
Yeah.
and was at a loss after her husband died. And so we decided after talking that it'd be a great idea for her to invite a bunch of people over, other
Fantastic.
single older adults. You let them get to know each other. She could cook a nice meal for them and they could have a great conversation around the whole.
Love it.
Yeah, me too.
Love it. It's
Exactly.
those kinds of ideas. And what fun. You finally have the freedom. You can do that. It would have been very easy during working life. So I don't have time for all that. No, you don't.
One thing that you also talked about is the transition doesn't have to wait until retirement. A lot of people are burned out in their careers and
Yes.
they're going to work to the same job day after day. It just keeps them depressed, etc. So what can they do at that late stage in their careers to jumpstart a smooth transition into retirement?
It's a fabulous question. And I love that question because there are many things people can do. And we often, that's part of the actual planning work we do in our work with people is let's start thinking about that. And so here are some examples. I will often notice that people, let's say someone's a year away, right? And they're beginning to transition some of their work, but it's leaving some gaps in their busyness at work. And that's very comfortable because they've always been a hardworking person and a good citizen at work. And it's, I don't have enough to do, but that's actually the point. If you pass work off. And so what we talk about is you've got to have a pattern interrupt here. You cannot continue with the identical work patterns that got you to this moment because you are in a transitional phase.
Mhm.
Now's the time to reallocate some of those hours to future pursuits and building in more space for your own agenda. So, for example, and of course, the specifics vary depending on someone's work life, but let's say somebody says, I feel like I twiddle my thumbs at work all afternoon because in 4 hours I've done what I can do and there's just nothing more to do. Then maybe the best thing to do is pick the 4 hours of the day where you're most effective, use those for work, and then give yourself permission to go home and do your exercise or go to a museum this all assumes you've got the autonomy to make some of these decisions. But what I find interesting is most people do they really at this stage do, or they can make those adjustments happen if they want, but they're just stuck in the old pattern. And so my encouragement to people is find the places in your week where you can block time for yourself. And whether you're focusing on your health, your relationships, new interests, contemplation, whatever the things are, put it in your calendar and make it real. And you will begin to realize that you're slowly tapering. You're tapering at work and you're building into the future. And by the time that moment of retirement truly arrives, you've largely flipped the balance so that now you're like, I've already been living this a while. And of course, the details are different for everyone, but it's a good big picture model.
Do you have to bring your employer into that discussion?
Yeah,
I would imagine.
exactly. I would always say to people, of course, we still want to be a good citizen. And so whatever that means in your context, many of my clients are partners in law firms and they do have this kind of autonomy. Those conversations are what they are. But certainly, if you've got the responsibility of truly being present for certain times of the day, then the thinking around this idea has to be modeled to fit.
Mhm.
I do believe what typically is going on when there's no transitional effort made, it's just old habits instead of fresh thinking. And so that's really the point is think about this year of transition with fresh eyes.
And many people who don't have that autonomy may still have success by having a discussion with their employer, I would think.
Absolutely.
There are options that could take place, even going part-time. If they
That's
only
exactly
work
right.
4 hours a week, 4 hours a day are the most productive, then the company might say, all right, we'll take you down to part-time. If you can, we can reduce your
Exactly.
salary a little bit and give you some extra time.
Yeah.
Open up opportunities for you to do things that are different. So rather than doing your job, now you're involved in mentoring younger people to do your job, that kind of thing.
It's such a great transitional idea.
Right.
because you are slowly getting like jerked out of your comfort zone overnight is very uncomfortable. Moving out of it gradually like this, oh my gosh, so much more manageable.
If you could turn the clock back, is there anything you do differently with your life?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I don't know that I don't necessarily look back and think, oh gosh, mistakes here, mistakes there. I do occasionally wonder if I had been more creative in my thinking at the moment when I made the decision I couldn't make my career in my motherhood life worlds work. I did not give myself permission to be creative the way that I would today tell a client to be creative.
Mhm.
And I clearly had to develop that skill, but I wish in a way I had it then because I think that I would have seen more opportunities to reshape my life I always joke, I just base jumped out of it. I was like, I'm out of here. And it was very hard to adjust to that. And all kinds of good things came out of that. But I've often wondered if I couldn't have solved some of this in a more creative way. Yeah.
Creativity is a great thing to talk about or to explore because it just energizes us when we can create things, especially things that weren't there in the past.
Yeah.
And it becomes a new sense of purpose for people if they're really embracing it in the retirement.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people over 50 who may be struggling with what to do to give their life more meaning and purpose?
I would say there is a little bit of tunnel vision that we all can have when we've come out of a big career. So the big piece of advice I would have is find something that helps you expand your thinking. It might just be brainstorming with some friends. It might be just throwing ideas around with your spouse. It could be journaling for some
Mhm.
people. Don't lose sight of the fact that you have some tunnel vision about yourself. And because I see part of what comes out of our program is this expanded thinking and lots of ideas. And often I'll ask, and this is a day into work with somebody, if you can do absolutely anything, and I'm guaranteeing you right this minute, you're going to knock it out of the park. So choose carefully because you can do absolutely anything. People will put voice to the big, audacious dream that they don't dare actually confess to as it seems too hard. I speak about a gentleman in my book who said the answer he gave, he was 55 and a real estate lawyer in Chicago. And the answer he gave to that question was, I would become a Broadway producer and the cherry on top would be a Tony Award. And he said, that's never going to happen. And I said, why not? People do it, so it's doable. Let's break it down. Why not? Who do you know? Who can help? What else do you need to find out? So we baked a plan and I said, just play with me and let's just see how far you can get toward this idea. And the long story short, 3 years later, he was standing on a stage accepting a Tony Award for Hadestown. Executive producer.
Wow.
He used 13 shows. He has had a whole next career as a Broadway producer. He's living his dream life. He's that lawyer thing. And it just thrills me. And he was the only one who didn't think he could do it. I'm like, you're an incredibly capable person. You can. So it's that kind of thing. The idea that you need to give yourself permission to go for it because you can tolerate way more latitude now in whether something works or not. In your early days, it has to work. Yeah, why not try?
And I think you touched on a sensitive subject. You have to be very careful with who you share your dreams with because you share your dreams with somebody who is not a high achiever or somebody who is content to stay home and watch Jeopardy. They are going to rip down your dream because if you succeed and you start living life to the full, it really reflects on their choice as well. So
that is a very interesting point. Yes.
You mentioned that you have a program. Do you actually walk people through this?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We've been working with people. We have a variety of different program formats. It started, and we still do, very subtle 2-day sessions with one person. So two of us with one person, we work through their whole plan. It's extremely high touch and custom and all that. That has evolved. We still do that work, but we've added group programs. We've added 1-day virtual programs that are just all the various factors. We're trying to make things affordable, approachable, convenient. So the 2-day program it's not inexpensive because it's a very involved, committed 2 days together. But we've tried to create mini formats for people so that if somebody could use this kind of support, it's accessible in some format. And then the book, obviously, is a reflection of many of the principles and exercises and frameworks that we use in the room when we're working with people.
Okay. Is it easier or better for people to work one-on-one with you or to be part of a group?
I think it depends on the person. I
agree.
would say, yeah, some people just really they need and want to focus in a private way with the material. Others love the idea of going through this like 2.5-day experience with a community of people going through the same thing. And that's always what comes out of that, which is neat, is a cohort of people. They're like, oh, we know each other now. And we all going through this thing together and we can help each other. And so that's a really nice byproduct of the group. So I think both formats have their pluses, just depending on where people are with their own situations.
The brainstorming that can come out of a group kind of environment like that
Fun.
is amazing. How people start feeding off of each other and the ideas and how the
So fun.
conversation can take different twists and turns. It would be really neat.
And then people in the room are like, I know a person you need to meet.
And it just perpetuates. How can people connect with you if they'd like to learn more about your program or just ask you a question?
Oh, thank you. I am on LinkedIn, Elizabeth Zelinka Parsons. I think I'm the only one of those on. So you can certainly find all of my company websites, my book, lots of media content there, and certainly reach out to me there. If you're not on LinkedIn, you can go to highachieverretirement.com, and that will take you to business websites and other places. And then the book, of course, is sold anywhere books are sold. That's out there as well. But I do love to connect with people who are living in this chapter of life. And so I really appreciate you asking.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing your story with me today. I really appreciate it. I know a bunch of people are looking for this kind of thing, and they retire and think they're going to be happy, and they aren't. So it might, after a couple of months of not doing the high achieving things again, they're bored, and they'll need people like you to steer them in the direction to really develop an encore life. So thank you for making it available, and thank you for talking about it today.
Oh, thank you, Greg. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
After turning 50, Elizabeth Parsons found that meaning and purpose came from helping others make their own successful transitions into retirement. She thrives on showing people that this season of life isn't about retreating, but about expanding and exploring what truly lights them up and gives their lives meaning. She does that through speaking, writing, and leading programs that help people to reimagine what's next. Elizabeth continues to coach individuals and couples as they prepare to leave the workplace. She helps them build bridges between their professional identities and their next adventures. Her work gives her the joy of seeing clients rediscover passions, revive friendships, and rekindle their sense of possibility. For Elizabeth, fulfillment today comes from witnessing those transformations. She loves seeing someone's eyes light up when they realize that retirement isn't the end of purpose, but the beginning of an encore life that is designed around contribution, curiosity, and connection. If you'd like to learn more about Elizabeth's work or to get her book, you can visit highachievementretirement.com or connect with her on LinkedIn. That's all for this week's show. If you'd like to start living a more meaningful life, I encourage you to download our free guide to finding purpose, which is available at www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thanks for listening, and if you like this show, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.